Hello everyone, I'm Arunima from Knit and Otter, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make these Tunisian crochet slippers. These are one of my favorite slippers that I've made with Tunisian crochet. I actually have a series of Tunisian slipper patterns which are made with simple construction, like they're made with squares or rectangles or simple shapes. This one is different. This one is slightly more complex, so I would say this is a more intermediate to advanced pattern only because of the way it is constructed, but it is made up of reverse stitches, simple stitches at the base, and lattice stitches here. So it's really the stitches that are used are not that hard. So if you know how to make those stitches, I would definitely recommend giving it a try. These are super comfortable. I love wearing them, and I'd love for you to give them a try. So I'm going to try and explain this as best as possible in this video so you won't have any issues while making it. Let's start with what you need to make these. So I've used a E4 hook, which is a 3.5 millimeters hook to make this. You also need a 6 millimeters hook to work the first section here. There is a tapestry needle, scissors, and the yarn that I've used for this is Stroll Tweed by Knit Picks. It's fingering weight yarn. I really like the tweed in this yarn. I love the look of the slippers that is made with this yarn. So I use a lot of the Stroll Tweed yarn, and I love to make my slippers with it. And in this, I've also used this super bulky Fable Fur yarn for this section. And I'm going to show you exactly how to use them and how to make these slippers. A quick note about the hook that I'm going to use in this project. This is a 3.5 millimeter hook, and you will need a Tunisian crochet hook that is a long hook because you'd have to accommodate about 120 stitches for this size, which is US size 8. Uh, but you will also need a long cord, and it's not because of the number of stitches, but mostly because of the construction. And you will see later in the video why this is important. But I strongly recommend having a long cord so you can slip your stitches in the parts that are difficult to construct. So please keep that in mind when you start making your slippers. A quick note about sizing. This video is for a US 8 women's size pattern. So this is a US women's 8 size slipper. So that's what I'm going to be making in this video. Start with the construction of the slipper. So how it's going to be made is that we start from here at the top here, the tweed section. We make this top portion first, and then we make this front here, and then we work around it and make this part, and then we make the base. This is the base with simple stitches, and then we go around the back, complete this, and then we add this first section to the top. So to begin this pattern, I'm going to start with 80 chains. So I'm going to make 80 chain stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80. So that's 80 chain. And I'm going to make a foundation row. So to make the foundation row, I'm going to insert my hook in the back bump of the second chain from the hook here, and yarn over pull through. So I'm going to do this for every chain stitch here. So pick up the back bump, yarn over pull through. There are multiple ways to make foundation row stitches, and I have a separate video for that. So if you need help with this, I have a separate tutorial that explains this in detail. But all you really have to do, like how I like to do, is I like to pick up the back bump and then yarn over pull through, and that's how I like to make all my foundation rows. But you're welcome to check out that video and see if you like a different uh, way to make the foundation row, but this is what I recommend, and this is what I'm going to do for this slipper. So I'm going to go ahead and make a stitch in every in the back bump of every chain stitch, and I will have 80 loops on my hook at the end of the forward pass. Here I am at 78 stitches. This is 79, and this is 80. So I'm going to now make the reverse pass. I'll start with a chain 1 and yarn over, pull through 2 all the way to the beginning. Here it is, last 2 stitches, and that completes the foundation row with 80 stitches. I'm going to make one row of Tunisian reverse stitches. So for this, I'm going to leave this loop on the hook that counts as the first stitch, and then I'm going to pick up the back vertical bar of the next stitch. So this is the front vertical bar which we pick up for making simple stitches, and then there is a back vertical bar. It's right behind this one right here. You have to pick this one, but from behind the project. So you have to turn it and you have to pick it up from the wrong side. So here, this one, and yarn over, pull through. I have a separate video that explains how to make Tunisian reverse stitches if you don't know how to make them. In this video, I'm just going to focus on the pattern for the slippers. So feel free to check that video out. I'll add a link to it in the description below. I'm going to make 80 reverse stitches in this row. So that'll be 2 edge stitches. So this is the first stitch, and then there'll be the last stitch and 78 reverse stitches in between. I'm on the last reverse stitch here, and then there is that edge stitch. I strongly recommend counting your loops on the hook at this point because it's easy to miss stitches or add additional ones. So if you um, want to save yourself some time and frustration, it is best to count. I did count and I have 80 here now. So make sure you do that before you start the reverse pass. So I'm going to make the reverse pass now. So it's a chain 1 and yarn over, pull through 2 all the way to the beginning of this row. Here I am at the end of, after completing the reverse pass for the first row. So this is one foundation row and one row of reverse stitches. I'm going to add 4 more rows of reverse stitches and see you on the other side of this video. Here I am after completing the foundation row and 5 rows of reverse stitches. This is how it looks, and this is this part of the slippers, this top over here, this section over here. This is the part we just made. So that's done now, and we're going to start working on this center portion here. So to make that next section, I'm going to put a stitch marker here, and I'm going to save this yarn. Save this from unraveling. So because we're going to leave this at this point and move on to the section here. And so I've put 2 more stitch markers here. This marks the 32nd stitch from this side. So that's count 31. And it's in the between the 31st and the 32nd stitch from that end. And same thing from this side. So count 31 stitches, and the stitch marker is in between the 31st and 32nd stitch. And there are 18 stitches in between these two stitches, and that's where we're going to work right now. So here I'm going to attach this new yarn over here. And that's going to be the first stitch. That's going to be a simple stitch. That's going to count as the first stitch. And then I'm going to make the lattice stitch. So that's just pick up these next two stitches, yarn over, pull through, and then pick up the first out of the two, yarn over, pull through. So that sort of makes an X here. I have a separate video tutorial for the lattice stitch if you want to take a look. I'm going to go ahead and make this all the way until I reach this point. So here, two, and then the first one. So I did this a total of 8 times and then make a simple stitch in that last stitch there. I'm going to make a reverse pass just like I normally would. So that's a chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, all the way to the beginning of this row. Making this first stitch a little bit tight so it stays as expected. So that's the first row for that center section. Now I'm going to remove these stitch markers here because we've got the 18 stitches that we're going to work with. I'm going to keep this one and going to try my best that it doesn't bang the table so it won't make noise, but I apologize in advance if it does. So here, now for the next row, I'm going to stagger these X stitches. So I'm going to start with a simple stitch and then make an X stitch by picking up the next two, yarn over, pull through, and then pick up the first out of the two, yarn over, pull through. Do this 7 times. That completes 7. And then there's this one stitch remaining. So make a simple stitch there and then a last stitch by picking up these 2 vertical bars, the last stitch from the previous row. And we make the reverse pass the same way as we normally would. So that's a chain 1 and yarn over, pull through 2 all the way till the beginning of this row. This first loop is the first stitch, counts as the first stitch, and then pick up 2, yarn over, pull through, and then pick up the first one out of the 2, yarn over, pull through, and then continue doing that a total of 8 times. And then the last stitch here. You will have a total of 18 loops on your hook at the end of the forward pass for every row in this section. So make sure you've got that count right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 18 loops on the hook and make the reverse pass, chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2. That's how it is after 3 rows. You can see the 3 rows of X stitches. I'm going to make a total of 20 and I'm going to see you on the other side of this video. So just make sure that you are staggering the X stitches. I mean, you could do it without staggering them too, and that's completely fine. But if you want to look like this one, Then here you can see that the X stitches are staggered. This is how it's looking after a total of 20 rows of the lattice stitch. I was going over my pattern notes again, and it looks like I misspoke earlier. We need 21 rows and not 20, so I'm going to make one more right here. So this is at the end of 21 rows. And now we're going to make a bind off row in the same pattern as the lattice stitch. So here, I'm trying my best that this doesn't tap on the table. So I'm just going to hold it here. Okay. So to make the bind off row, you just have to follow the pattern. So this row was X stitches from the beginning. So this one will start with a simple stitch, and slip stitch bind off. Same for here. So we pick up the next two, yarn over, pull through, and slip, and then pick up the first one of the two, yarn over, pull through, and slip. So continue doing that till you reach the end of this row. Then there's a simple stitch over here at the end, and end it with the last stitch. There it is. So I'm going to stop here for a second and show you how this looks. So this is this part here at the top, and then this is this section here. So we've completed two sections, and now I'm going to move on to the side part, and I'll show you how. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to cut this yarn and fasten off, and I'm going to weave in these two ends so that they're out of the way when I'm working on the rest of it. Here I am with all ends weaved in, and now I'm going to start working on the next section. At this point, you can remove the stitch marker and start working from here. We're going to make reverse stitches here, and then we're going to pick up stitches along the side, along the top, along the side, and then pick up the rest of, or make reverse stitches in this section as well. So this is the part where I will need a cord, as we talked about earlier. There are two reasons why. You will see that you will need this cord. One is that you will have more loops on the hook than you'll be able to hold directly onto the hook, and this section gets a little tricky when you're picking up loops, and that is when the cord comes in handy, and I'll show you how. So let's start with making reverse stitches. There was a total of 31 stitches here before we started on this section, so we'll have, so this counts as the first stitch, so we'll make 30 reverse stitches. Here I am with 31 loops on my hook, so that's the first stitch, and 30 reverse stitches, and I'm at this point where we started making this section. So now I'm going to start picking up stitches on this edge, and if you look at my other slipper here, you can see that this section is a little that stands out a little, so I didn't pick up the edge stitches here. I didn't pick those up. I picked up the next stitch from the back, and that's the part that's the trickiest, I think, in this. And if you're not up for doing this, that's completely fine. I'll show you why here. So if you look at the back, it's very hard to find the back loop in any stitch here. So if I wanted to pick up this stitch next to this one at the back, I can't really see it. So I'm going to show you what I do, and I'm going to show you a couple of other options that you have if this doesn't work for you. So what I did is, this was my first row here. So I go from the back and then I find the first vertical bar at the back. And sometimes I pick up more than I need to, so it takes a few tries here. So you can usually find the next back vertical bar by just inserting your hook like this from back to front, and then see, here I can actually see this. You see, I can see this back vertical bar right here. So that's the one I need to pick up and yarn over, pull through. Same for the next one, insert hook, and I can actually see a little bit of the back vertical bar right here, and that's the one I'm going to push back a little and pick up. And this doesn't have to be exactly right. Um, you could be picking up a different loop than the one that I picked up, and it's completely fine. It's just to give this the look that is there in the slipper, where the edges are standing out a little and they're not blending in with the rest of the slipper. That's the reason I'm doing this. But here's another option. If this is uncomfortable, you could actually just pick up the back vertical bar. So if you look at the side here, there are two vertical bars. There's this one and there's this one. So you could just pick up the back vertical bar and pull through. That would also give you a little bit of a raised edge here. And well, the last option is that you don't do this at all and just pick up these two vertical bars and join on the side. And that's completely fine. It would just not give it this raised edge, which it's a minor detail unless it's important to you. So if it is important to you, I'd go ahead and do the extra effort of inserting the hook here and finding that next back vertical bar and yarn over and pulling through. So it's there, I promise. Every stitch has a back vertical bar. It's just hard to see in the lattice stitch, as you see at the back. So that's my way of doing it. And I hope you will be able to do it too. But if not, there are those two options that I showed you, which I think are structurally, they won't make a big difference. It would just be how your slipper looks. I actually should have used a stitch marker so I don't forget my count. I'm going to do that. I'm going to add a stitch marker so I don't forget how many stitches I've picked up. So count 31. 1, 2, 3, 31. That's 31 right there. And I'm going to pick up a total of 21 stitches because we made 21 rows. So 21 stitches is what we're going to pick up. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is where, if you see that it's getting harder for me to work on this edge, so this is where the cord comes in handy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the 31 loops from the previous section onto the cord, and I'm going to pull the cord through like this. So that makes it moving those stitches towards the end. So this gives me a little more, uh, it makes it easier to work on this section. Here. That should be 21. That's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 21. So that's 21 loops that we've picked up on this edge. And you can see that this edge shows up like a chain, sort of embossed at the top. And that's what I was looking for. So that's what I'm going to write in the pattern. But those two other options are uh, will work just as fine. So now I'm going to move my hook in this direction, and you can see again that it's going to be hard to work. So I'm going to now move all these stitches back onto my cord along with the earlier ones, and I am going to now work on, okay, in between holding this and trying to make sure that this doesn't tap on the table. It's a little hard, but I'm going to try my best that it doesn't make that extra sound. Okay, so now I have all my loops on the cord. That is extremely helpful because otherwise I won't be able to move. So I was picking up loops from this edge here. Now I need to pick them up from this edge. So moving it, turning it perpendicular is hard with a lot of loops on your hook. So just move them back on the cord. And then now we picked up 24 here, and there were 18 stitches here, but the two corner stitches will be accounted for when we are picking up these edge stitches. So we'll just pick up 16 stitches here. And if you turn this around, you can see, so to make sure that I have that embossed look on this edge as well, what I did was I turned this around and I can see just behind that bind off chain, there are these stitches here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. There is one there. Once I start picking up stitches, I'll be able to find it. So I'm going to start picking up stitches on this edge now. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 16 here, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. I'm going to go do the same thing. I'm going to slip them off to the cord because I'm going to start working in this direction now. The other thing you could do if you don't have a hook with a cord or a cord this long, you could probably slip these stitches off to another cord and unscrew your hook and work with it. I think that will also work well. Or you could find a stitch holder and slip these off to a stitch holder. Um, just trying to think of ways to work with it, work on it without a long cord. So hopefully that will be helpful. And now I'm back to struggling with this tapping. Okay. So I'm now going to move on to this section, and I've done one thing. I'm filming this the third time because I was trying to find an easier way to do this than I've done before, and I think I've found it. So I'm going to use that. Uh, I have done one thing. I've unscrewed my hook because it just makes it easier to work on this section. I'm going to screw it back later. And because I have a long cord, I don't worry about losing these loops. So, but if you have a shorter cord, please put a stopper here so that you don't lose the hooks, the loops that you already have on this. Um, what I'm going to do is, so here, if you look, and I'm sorry, this has become so fuzzy because I've tried it like 3 or 4 times already. So I'm going to show you in this one actually. So every edge stitch is the same, and this one is just the same as this, but because that's fuzzy, I'm going to show you this. Here's, if you pick this up, there's two vertical bars here, and there's one bar at the back. We're not going to pick that one. I've tried it, and if you see that there's a lot of space between this and the stitch, the actual stitch, and that makes the two sides of this uneven. So we have to go behind all three of these. So behind all three and not just behind two, not just behind the two vertical bars like we did on the other edge. That's because the way these two edges are constructed are different, and just uh, it stands out a lot more in this pattern. Um, so what I'm going to do is, if I'm going to show you what I'll do here. So if you turn this around, instead of finding that next vertical bar, I'm just going to go into this horizontal bar right here. So there is one right behind. So these are the three edge vertical bars, and they're here. I'm going to go into this and this and this. I hope that's easy to see. So it's like, if this is the edge stitch, there is this loop I can pick up. If this is the edge stitch, I could pick up this and this. So just any stitch or any loop that is behind these three here, I can pick that up. So I'm going to do that, and hopefully it will work out because it's going to be slightly different from the other slipper. I'm going to insert my hook here, and I'm going to pick up this bar right here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 20, and 21. So here I am. I've picked up 21 stitches here, and I'm now going to attach this. I really wish these were swivel cords, but they're not, but it's okay. I'm just going to attach my hook back and move these loops onto the cord. Here they go with the rest of them. And then I'm going to now work on this last section, which is right here. And I'm tempted to unscrew my hook again, so I'm just going to do that. It's easier to work without the cord attached because of these different sections. So here now, I'm going to work on this last section here, and there are going to be 30 reverse stitches and then that last stitch. So a total of 31 loops is what we'll be adding to the hook. That's 1, and make sure that there's not a lot of yarn in between that last stitch and this one. And I've found that it's easier to work with this if that cord is not attached to the hook. Um, Otherwise, there's a lot of tugging and pulling to make sure the tension is even. 2, 3, 30, and the last one, that's 31. I added 31 loops on the hook, and I'm going to go ahead and attach my cord again. Okay, so I'm going to move these to the cord and show you how they look. So this is how it's looking right now. Picked up stitches along the entire edge. This one here, and this. And I'm going to move these loops back to the hook and start a reverse pass. This will be a regular reverse pass, and I apologize for this noise, but just going to move all these loops to the hook. And this can be a little hard if your loops were a little tight, so this might take some work. Just make sure that you don't pull too much and just gently slide them over the hook or the reverse pass. It might also be a good idea to do this in sections, but I'm going to try and move as many as I can. So here I've got these much. So I'm going to start my reverse pass, and there's going to be chain 1 and yarn over, pull through 2 all the way to the beginning. Got some of them, and here you can also do this in sections. Like I moved some of the loops back because they were too tight to come back onto the hook, so I'm going to do it in sections. This is how it looks after completing that row. That is the hardest row to make in this pattern, and it was quite a bit of work, but I'm glad I'm passed through that. Uh, Now it's just a bunch of uh, reverse stitches. So here I am now. We've made this one row around, and now we're just going to continue making reverse stitches around. We have to make 14 rows of reverse stitches now, and then another one, a 15th row with a bind off. So let's do one row of reverse stitches. So I'm starting my row of reverse stitches. One, three. After making these 31 stitches here, then I'm just moving on to this section directly without having to do anything else. Continue to make reverse stitches. And there will be a point here where I have to move my stitches back to the cord because it'll be hard to work on them. Um, and I'll have to do that for a few rows, maybe 5 or 6 rows before it starts to even out, and then I can just make them like a regular row where I won't have to move my loops around. Make sure that your loops are nice and even because of the structure of this, it's easy to make your stitches or the tension to become tight because you're trying to hold your yarn while maneuvering the fabric in different directions. See, it's getting harder to find these stitches. Let's still do it. And now it's getting really hard to work on this other side, so I'm going to move these loops to the cord. So that's the end of that row, and it is a standard reverse pass with a chain 1 and yarn over, pull through 2 all the way till the beginning. This is how it's looking after that one row of reverse stitches. I'm going to make 13 more. So that'll be a total of 14 rows, and then there'll be a 15th row of reverse stitches, which will be the bind off row. So I'm going to make 13 more rows of reverse stitches and see you on the other side of this video. So all you have to do is make 13 more rows of reverse stitches around. You can see here this portion is starting to build up now. Here, and just keep building these reverse rows of reverse stitches, and that will complete this section. This is how it looks after completing 14 rows of reverse stitches here. So I just went around and made 14 rows of reverse stitches. Um, and so this forms this part of the slipper here. So this section is done, and now we're going to move on to the bottom where um, we're going to start making the base. But before we do that, we're going to bind off the reverse stitches, or we're going to bind off here with reverse stitches, and then we're going to start working on this base. So this is just a normal slip stitch bind off. I'm going to I'm going to unscrew my hook at this time. I don't need this long cord for the bind off. Here, going to pick up the back vertical bar, yarn over, pull through, and then slip. Then I'm going to do this all the way till the end. But I'm just going to make sure that I make these slip stitches a little loose, and that's because we're going to work the base in these stitches, and it's important to be able to pick these up with the hook. Otherwise, it'll be very difficult to work on the base. Here I am at the end. I have almost completed this bind off row. Here is the last stitch here by picking up the two vertical bars and yarn over, pull through, and slip. And this is where I'm going to stop. And now we will start working on that base section. This is how it looks after completing the bind off row with reverse stitches. And so what I've done now is I've added these stitch markers to start working on the base, and I'll show you how we do that. So this is the part that we're going to work on now. This is the bottom of the slipper, and this is going to be worked in Tunisian simple stitches. And the technique that we're going to use here is we will make the strip of simple stitches and join on both sides as we go. I'm going to show you how to do that, but just know that we are joining as we go on both sides as we make the base. So I've attached this stitch marker here on the 55th chain from the beginning here. So if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, so it's like the 55th chain here, and this is the 65th one. So there's a total of 11 stitches, including the ones with the stitch markers. So I'm going to attach my yarn here. There. And then I'm going to pick up a loop in every chain until the next stitch marker. So insert your hook, pick up the two bars of the chain, and yarn over, pull through. So this is why it is important for the bind off slip stitches to be loose, because you're supposed to work the entire base in those stitches. So it is you should be able to insert your hook into these stitches. If you're unable to, I recommend undoing the last row and doing it again with looser stitches, or you could use a smaller hook to pick up to insert and then pick up that loop. But you've got to do it a lot of times. So it might just be easier to undo the last row, the bind off row, and do it again. Here, two more to go. And the last one. So I have 11 loops. I think I split the yarn there. Okay, here. So 11 loops on the hook. That's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. So this is what we need, and I'm going to remove these stitch markers now. I don't need them anymore. And so I'm going to yarn over and pull through 2 instead of chain 1. That is because this stitch right here, this last one, counts as the join. So this is, since it is the join as you go method, uh, you will see how this will start to make a lot more sense as you make the base, as you make a few more rows. But for now, just know that you need to yarn over and pull through 2 and not chain 1, and yarn over, pull through 2 all the way till the beginning of this. And then at this point, we're going to join on this side. So I'm going to insert my hook in the next chain. So this is the one where we started from. I'm going to insert my hook in the next one, and I'm going to pick up that loop and pull it through. So that joins on this side, and this last one here joins on that side. So you will see how it works up once we make a few more rows. So just one more thing, for the next row, we will not leave this as it is. We will chain 1 and then start working on the next stitches of this row. So here you can see that there will be 9 more loops that you will pick up on this hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's 9 loops, and then you will pick up the one last one that would be for the join. So let's do that. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then we'll insert the hook into the next chain. So this was the chain that we joined with earlier. Now we're going to insert our hook in the next one right here. And I see that I made this one a little tight, so it might take a little work to insert my hook there, but that's the reason I said that these stitches, your bind of stitches, need to be loose. And yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2 all the way to the beginning. And then let that, leave that hook here. I'm sorry, leave the loop here, and then insert your hook into the next chain. So this is the one that we worked on in the previous row, or joined with, and then I'm going to pick up this one, and then I'm going to pick this loop and pull through. So that joins on both sides, and I'm going to continue doing this. So there are a couple of things to know here. Don't forget to chain 1, that's important. You can actually try it without the chain 1 and see how you like it, but I prefer to chain 1, and that this is how it ends up looking. It gives it a neat or a symmetric base on both sides. The joins are symmetric, otherwise it for me it doesn't look the same, and you're welcome to try it and see how it looks, and choose one or the other based on which one you prefer. So that's one. The other thing that's really important to know here is that simple stitches are tall. So when you are working this way, these stitches are taller than the reverse stitches. Sorry, these simple stitches are taller than these reverse stitches are wide. So what will happen is if you uh, make a row and join with every chain on this side, this will be taller than this side of the fabric, uh, which would make it wouldn't sit flat. So we're going to skip every eighth chain here to accommodate for that. So you'll make 7 rows of this, and then uh, the eighth one you're not making the next. You skip one chain and then make it in the next one. So I'm going to make 7 rows and show you how to do the eighth one. So here I am after completing 7 rows. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now I'm going to make the eighth one, and I'll show you how to skip the uh, the stitch on the edges. So pick up 9, so that's 9, and then so this was the last one that we joined with. I'm going to skip this one and join in the next. And then yarn over, pull through 2, and then on this side, the same thing. I'm going to, so this is where I joined the previous one. I'm going to skip this and I'm going to join in the next. And then I'm going to make 7 more and then skip the 8th. So I'm going to continue doing this all the way till I have reached this end. Now, I just want to point out one thing, that it is possible that you might skip stitches and these might not line up exactly the same. You might be a stitch or two off by the time you reach uh, this point, the corners, and that's completely fine. It doesn't matter too much. You can make some adjustments and uh, join in the same stitch or skip one depending on how much you need to adjust on each side. So just keep that in mind. It's fine if you're a stitch or two off. You don't have to redo the entire thing. Uh, Try to be as close as possible. If there is a difference of 4 or 5 stitches, then that's definitely going to be more visible, and it might make your slippers uncomfortable. So just if you're a stitch or two off, that would not matter too much. So I'm going to do this all the way till here and then meet you on the other side of this video. This is how it looks after completing the bottom part of the base. So I made 7 rows and then skip the eighth and then 7 to accommodate for the difference in height of the simple stitches versus the width of the reverse stitches. So this is sitting fairly flat for me. If yours isn't sitting flat, uh, then either you have too few or extra rows. So if it is bunched up, then you need to add a few more rows. You might have to undo this and add a few more rows. And if it's ruffling, or if it's then if it's ruffling, then there's most likely more rows than you need. And at that point, it's up to you if you'd like to undo it or if you'd like to leave it as it is. But I decided to skip every eighth, and that worked out great for me. So I have a total of 49 rows at this point, and I'm at the ends on both edges. And you could have less or more depending on what you decided to do with this, or if you made a mistake, got to skip, that's completely fine. This is at the bottom, it won't be visible. For me, the most important part here is that the two joins look symmetrical, and if you see here, they look fairly symmetrical on both sides. So that's that's what's important to me, but it completely depends on how you want to go forward with it. So 49 rows is what I have at this point. So now we're going to work on this part here. You can see that we had simple stitches all the way until here, and then we have reverse stitches here. So that's what we're going to do. And so we're going to work the reverse stitches, and then the tapers, we do some decreases to give this shape. So I'm going to show you how to do all of that now. When we turn, the first row that we're going to make is simple stitches. The reason for that is that when you make a row in Tunisian crochet, more often than not, you're actually defining the previous row. Like this row right now is sort of a ghost row. It doesn't have a stitch. So if I make simple stitches now, that will define this row as a simple stitch row. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do a chain one and make a row of simple stitches. And the join will happen on this edge now, not at the bottom because all these stitches have been used up here. So the best way to find that first edge stitch is look at that reverse stitches row and find the edge for that. So here, this one's the edge for that, and to pick up the last the two vertical bars, trying my best to not split the yarn. And I think I got it. So these two, and then yarn over and pull through. Make the return pass, so that would be yarn over, pull through two, all the way till the beginning. And then join on this side the same way. So this is the last reverse stitch row, and this is the corresponding edge stitch for that row. I'm going to pull that through. That's the join on this side. So that defines the previous row as a simple stitch row. And so now I'm going to turn my work, and I'm going to make the strip here to join. So there's one thing that I'd like you to do at this point is to add a stitch marker at the ninth stitch from the end. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And a good way to find this is, again, you can count the rows. So that's the reverse stitch rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And that is the corresponding edge stitch for that reverse stitch row. So I like to do that on both sides just to make sure that I have not made a mistake here. This is the part which is slightly more important than the base because you will need exact number of stitches on this side. It would be okay if you're a row off, but I like that this part be accurate. So I'm going to add another stitch marker on the other edge. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's there. Okay. So now I'm going to make rows of reverse stitches until one stitch before that stitch marker. Just the same thing that we were doing here, but with reverse stitches instead. So I would chain one, and normally I would, like earlier, I would pick up this as a simple stitch. Now I'm going to pick this up as a reverse stitch. So I just picked up 9 stitches. It's a total of 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then I'm going to join with the next edge stitch. That's this one here. And then yarn over, pull through 2 all the way till the beginning. And then join with the next one here. So that's there. So that's the second one, second one. And that's the edge. And yarn over, pull through. So make rows of reverse stitches and join on both sides all the way until 1 stitch before the stitch marker. So I will complete that and see you on the other side of this video. This is how it looks after making 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 rows of reverse stitches. Um, I forgot to mention this earlier, but in this section here, I'm not going to skip any stitches on the side. That's because we're making the exact same stitches as this, and this sort of, there's no difference in height in these 2 stitches, so there's no need to skip any stitches or any edge stitches. So I just kept making rows and joining them with every edge stitch on both sides. So I'm now at the point where I've reached the stitch markers and I'm going to start working on some decreases. I'm going to remove these stitch markers now. Don't need them anymore. So the next row is chain 1. I've already done that. And then decrease. So we're going to do a reverse stitch decrease. All that means is, so for a simple stitch decrease, what we do is we pick up the next 2 vertical bars and yarn over, pull through. But in the reverse path, in the reverse stitch decrease, I'm just going to go in the back, pick up the back vertical bars of the next 2 stitches, yarn over, and pull through. That's it. That's the only difference. So I'm going to make 5 more reverse stitches now. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then another decrease. So that's picking up the next 2 vertical bars, the back vertical bars, yarn over, pull through. So that gives us 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 loops on the hook at this point, and then join with the next row. That's this one. So I'm already, hard to see, but I've joined with this one. I'm going to join with the next, and yarn over, pull through. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 loops on the hook. Yarn over, pull through 2 all the way till the beginning. And then join on the next, join with the next edge stitch on this side here. So now in the next row, I'm just going to make reverse. So I'm going to start with chain 1, and then I'm going to make reverse stitches in all the stitches here. So before we made the decreases, we were picking up 9 stitches. Now I'm going to pick up 7. That's because we decreased 2 stitches. There's 1, 2, 3, and 7, and then it joined. And then yarn over, pull through 2, and join on this side as well, and chain 1. So the next row says we have to decrease again. So I'm going to go in the back and pick up the next 2 vertical bars. Make sure that I'm not splitting the yarn. So 1 and 2 and 3 reverse stitches. 1, 2, and 3, and then another decrease. And a join. And then yarn over, pull through 2, and a join on the side. And chain 1. Now the next row is reverse stitches, 5 reverse stitches. That's 1 and 5, and join. And join on this side. Chain 1. Now we'll make a decrease, and 1 reverse stitch and another decrease, and join. Chain 1 and then 3 reverse stitches, and join. And then a decrease, reverse stitch, and join. And then 2 reverse stitches, and join. And then a decrease, and join. So this is the last edge stitch on this side, yarn over, pull through all loops, and join on this side. And chain one. So this completes the back. You can see that it's nice and tapering. It gives it a nice shape. And this is how it looks right now. The only part that's remaining is that fur at the top, and I'm going to show you how to do that. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to join here and complete this. I forgot to do it in the previous part, but here, so that completes the back. And at this point, you can wear this and see if it fits you. This part will be a little loose, and that's to be expected, but the rest of the slipper should fit you at this point. Um, Now to work the fur yarn, because the fur yarn is very thick, it's going to be very hard to uh, use it in these stitches directly. So I'm going to make uh, I'm going to work around and make chain spaces which are larger than this so that I can work the fur yarn in them. So I'm going to start with a single crochet here, and chain two, and then skip one stitch and single crochet in the next one, and then chain two, skip one, and single crochet in the next. So you get these chain spaces that will be easy to work in. Um, I'm going to go around and all the way until I reach back here. Should have about 80. So we have 80. We started with 80 chains. This is the foundation chain. So you'll have 80 chains, and as you go around, you should have a total of 40 chain spaces. Even if you have extra stitches, or if you have lost some stitches, that's completely fine. Just make sure that you have about 40 chain spaces at the end when you're completing this. So just made 38 chain spaces. I'm going to make my 39th now. And chain two, this is going to be the 40th, and I'm going to, doesn't matter how many stitches are left, I'm just going to join with that first single crochet that we had. So this is where I had started from, and I'd started with a single crochet, and I'm just going to slip stitch and join with that. And we have 40 chain spaces that we can start working our first section in. I'm going to fasten off and cut this yarn because we're done with it. It really doesn't take a lot of yarn. It's uh, just a little bit of work with this section. I thought that this section was the hardest, but aside of that, it's fairly straightforward to make. So I'm going to cut this yarn and leave this end in, and I'm going to pull out my fur yarn and show you how to make that last section. This section is made with fur yarn. It is nice and soft, and this is the Fable Fur Super Bulky in color Kuma. I don't know how that's pronounced, but Kuma is what it says. And so we're going to make double crochet stitches. It's not very easy to work with this yarn, I find, only because it's hard to see the stitches. But we're going to use double crochet stitches, and the first row will be made in these chain spaces, so it will be okay. I'll show you how I use this. And because there's a lot of fur in this, when you actually when you make these rows here, I hope I got them evenly spaced out, but even if I didn't, if I got them fairly evenly spaced out, it works out just fine. You just have to get the right number of stitches. So let's start with going to attach at the back here. So this is a 6 mm hook, and I'm going to attach this here and chain 2, and then double crochet in the next chain space. So this will count as a double crochet decrease. So this will be count as 1 stitch for the subsequent rows. For the next one, I'm going to yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through 2, hold that on the hook, and then insert hook in the, yarn over, insert hook in the next one, yarn over, pull through 2, and then you have 3 loops on the hook. Here's 1, here's 2, here's 3. So yarn over, pull through 2, and then slip from the third. So actually it's yarn over, pull through 3. So this is regular crochet. It's hard for me to switch between traditional and regular crochet. I forget to uh, slip through that last stitch. So you actually have to yarn over and pull through all 3. So this is 2 double crochet decreases. And so the next will be here and here, and then there's 3 loops and yarn over, pull through all 3. I try to feel my stitches here because sometimes it's easy to miss a stitch or miss a loop with this yarn. Just want to make sure I have 3, and then yarn over, pull through 2. No, I'll pull through 3. 1, 2. So here I am. I've made this entire round, and there's no way for me to count these. So, but I'm hoping that I think I think I counted, and there are going to be a total of 20 DC decreases here. And so I'm just going to go and so I can feel this. This was the initial chain. I'm going to join with that with a slip stitch. So that completes one round of or one row of the fur. Uh, it's hard to see the stitches, but because of that, it's also very forgiving. Even if you make mistakes, if you add an extra stitch or if you remove a stitch, it won't make a difference. So that's pretty good about this. Otherwise, it would have been very hard to work with this, but I love how it feels. It's really nice and soft. So now I'm going to make 6 more rows of DC stitches. So there'll be 20 stitches in every row. There are no more decreases, so just chain 2 and just feel where there might be a stitch to be made, and pull through 2 and pull through 2. So that's 1, and then 2. So make sure that since there are 20, just make sure that you have about 10 until this center point. So you'll have 10 here and about 10 on that side. So I'm at 2 and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I'm right at the middle of this, and that's my 10th. And then there'll be 10 more on the other side. So 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 7, 17, 18, 19, and 20. And here is that first chain. I'm just going to flip, stitch, and join. So that's row 2. I'm going to make 5 more, and I'll show you how it looks at the end. This is how it looks after 5 rows of so the base row, that was DC decreases, and then 5 more rows of DC stitches. I decided to stop here, so because I in my notes I did write that I have 6 rows here, but I feel that I might have got that wrong because 5 rows of DC comes out to be this much. So I apologize that I said 5 earlier in the video. Uh, I'm sorry, 6 earlier in the video. That's a total of 6. So there's one base, the one that we made in the uh, chain spaces, and then 5 on top of that. So that I'll show you how it looks. Here it is. This is how it's looking. We started with this section here, and then we made this front, and then we completed this part. Then we made the base all the way till here, and then the back, and then this top fur section. Um, I think this has been one of my it's one of my more complex patterns, but I really, really like it. I love how it feels when I wear them, and they're super comfortable. They're nice and cozy. They keep my feet warm. Uh, so I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you will enjoy making yours. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I have a bunch of other slipper patterns on that are simpler. I went for simpler construction in the others, and I have a lot of other tutorials on my YouTube channel and a bunch of patterns on my blog. So feel free to check those out. And thank you for watching. Bye bye.